New guy says 100%. But obviously, corruption is a big problem, but the definition of corruption is far different than what one anticipates. I know one of the companies we deal with spent $169 million in civil penalties to the United States government before we were called in. They do business all around the world. If one of their salespeople is involved improperly in providing incentives to people in the foreign government, it can make a big difference. And the idea of integrity is something that is being elevated significantly in our culture and in cultures around the world. And it's important for us to understand how consequential it can be. Another company we've done significant work for paid over $700 million in civil penalties before we were called in to help them develop a capacity to be compliant with the law. And regulations not only have a compliance cost, but they have a non-compliance cost, and there should be significant non-compliance costs for individuals who violate the law. And one of the things we seek to do in our enterprise is to be involved in what I call anticipatory compliance. As government has developed a sense of ratcheting, so that they're always, each time something is done, it's greater. The environmental regulation or the regulatory environment, either way you want it. The environment always finds a growth in regulation. It's important for people to understand where the government's next regulatory effort will be. The idea of one of the greatest hockey players in history who put it this way: I don't need to know where the puck is, I need to know where the puck is going to be. That's Gretzky, who said, I've got to anticipate it so I don't find myself behind the action. One of the things that people have to do in an environment where regulation is not static but dynamic is to try and anticipate where it is, where it will be. We try to help people do that. I think that's a very risky thing for a culture, to have the growth of regulation in such a way that no one can be sure what the regulation is. It's one of the problems that attends, for instance, the philosophy of the law, that people say we have an organic law. That is, that the law just kind of grows as the judges see where it needs to be. We sort of let it, in sort of amoebic fashion, sort of ooze over in that direction and cover something that perhaps hadn't originally been intended. In addition to usurping the legislative and executive branches for making the law, because the legislature and the executive together make it with votes and vetoes and overrides and signatures. It also provides an environment of uncertainty. And an environment of uncertainty is an environment in which growth is inhibited. I submit to you that in legal uncertainty, there are a couple of things that are really problematic. The first of which is that there is a chilling effect when you don't know what you can do and what you can't do. You have an automatic reverse ratchet in terms of the aggressiveness, the potential intensity with which business is conducted. Secondly, so you have what I call a reverse ratchet, or paralysis. At some level, you paralyze when people don't know what they're allowed to do and what they can't do. The second thing you have, in addition to paralysis, is proliferation. And by that I mean the proliferation of lawyers. And this is something that's been of great benefit to me as people come to me after they've asked other lawyers what to do. And I say, well, I don't know if you could see it that way. And guess what? Almost the second opinion of every lawyer will be another opinion, somehow shaded and different than somebody else's opinion. But the more money we spend and the more resources we spend on proliferating legal resources instead of producing. You see, the law is a transactional cost. It doesn't produce anything, it's just one of the costs of the transactions, the less we actually have in terms of the energy of production in the culture. So evolving legal standards results in paralysis in the community, not sure whether we can do this or not. And secondly, in the consumption or the devotion of too many of the resources into the legal profession and not into the productive end of the enterprise. And obviously that's something that we're seeing a lot about the paralysis in American government now. The big tax debate over the end of this last session related to a paralysis that was a result of not being able to anticipate what we could expect. People having unknown consequences. If I invest now in additional plant and equipment, will a new tax structure collapse my investment and make return on that investment impossible? That's part of the problem. Thankfully, the Congress decided to kick the can down the road a little ways, but 2 years is not much lead time. If you're in a business and you want to make long-term investment potentials, knowing that there's only a certain tax environment for the next 2 years is a pretty serious drawback. You need people to say, these are the terms for the investment. How can we as a government expect to say, we want you to make a 20-year commitment to a community and to expect to be able to get a return on that over time if we'll only make a 2-year commitment to you about how it will be taxed or how it will otherwise be accounted for purposes of governance? So uncertainty has this significant role in the way things operate. Has it at the national level, has it at the local level, and I think our ability to say to people there is a stable environment in which you can expect to make decisions and that the knowledge you have now will support your decision in the future. We won't guarantee anybody's decision will be right. And what I've found is that those of you that are involved in business never want us to try and guarantee that you'll be right. You understand the nature of risk and reward, and you're willing to take the risk. You just don't want someone changing the rules in the process. And so that's, I think, where we need to find ourselves, and what we aspire to and how we conduct ourselves is to provide a statement about the intensity that we can allow in the community based on the predictability of the conditions that are provided by government. And hopefully the federal government will be able to do that. If our government will be unable to do it, we'll find ourselves with the uncertainty that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. And we're already at a serious competitive disadvantage. America has, I think, the second highest corporate tax rate in the world. The rest of the world is welcoming business and encouraging it, not because business as business is virtuous, but because business is the way in which the rest of the population finds opportunity. How many people really find opportunity in a culture absent some aspect of business? The enterprise and commerce of a corporation provides the ladders upon which people reach new heights that they've never before reached. And that's the whole idea of the ascending opportunity that we have the opportunity to try and create. The president looked in my direction and said, don't ever let this happen again. He wanted us to go into action. And the principles work in an inverse way. We wanted to make the environment for terrorists uncertain. We wanted to signal to them, you'll never know where you'll find us. I scheduled very quickly the interviewing of about maybe as many as 10,000 people on the streets of America in identified communities that were, we designed it so that if there were people out there thinking about doing things, they'd be saying to themselves, this would be a bad time to do things. These guys are everywhere. The environment should be uncertain in that respect. And we created an uncertain environment with the hopes and understanding that it would increase our capacity to defer, default, detect, disrupt acts of terror. Well, if an uncertain environment will default and detect, disrupt acts of terror, an uncertain environment also defaults, disrupts, and defects opportunity. And our ability to make opportunity something which is welcome is something that we all care about and want to be involved in. For me, this is a great time of year. You're at the beginning of a legislative session. The window of opportunity is special. Not in my life.